It's my pleasure to introduce Bruce Melton, who is our guest speaker today and is going to be treating us to a photo journal of climate impacts that he's been accumulating over the years. He seems to be somewhat of a Renaissance man. He's an engineer and an academic, an explorer, a photographer, and a documentarian. So welcome you all, and Bruce, over to you, and we'll share your journey with you through photos.
Good. I have been documenting climate change impacts since 2007 across North America and Greenland. And I didn't get anything from Greenland in here. I haven't been there in many years. This is just a quick, one of the longest quick slideshows I've ever put together. It's well, let's just get into it. My background, civil engineering, the oldest independent climate science education organization in the world. My original research was in non-point source stormwater pollution treatment, and I've been 40 years in Austin as a land development consultant specializing in critical environmental issues. This is new drought of record at Lake Buchanan. The Highland Lakes of Central Texas. We set new drought of record 2011 to 2013. This is our last film, won a couple of awards, actually, yay. A lot of what you will see comes from this epic journey, 45 days, 43 camps, 16,000 miles from the Gulf of Mexico to the North Slope of Alaska. And I'm going to start off with a bunch of slides on the beach. This is just my summary. What you see here is South Padre Island, king tide erosion. This is relatively minor in the scope of things in geologic time, but in contemporary times, you see this stuff during hurricanes, but not during sunny days. And it started, oh, here we go, sea level rise. This is the flats on Padre Island, a couple of inches above sea level. The Laguna Madre behind the barrier island is almost enclosed, very low connection to the Gulf of Mexico, very, very low tides, an inch or less. And they're gone today. This is basically what it looks like. During high tide, during low tide, it's still a muddy mess a lot, except during king tide periods when it's just gone. It looks just like this. This little stick up right here is the edge of water that you really can't even see. See, it's way back there. I took this photo with a telephoto. This is the Laguna Madre, and the wind turbines in the background are on the mainland of Texas on the King Ranch. A mirage has actually thrown the water up into the wind turbines. Really interesting effect. There we go. These are dunebergs. This is South Padre Island, about halfway to high tide during a king tide pulse, 2018. See this block of sand? See that these angle of repose fractures here? The surf eats out the bottom of the dune, and then these big blocks of sand slide down into the surf zone. Dunebergs. This is ongoing erosion. Here's another one. You see the angle of repose. This is a drone shot. All on South Padre here. This is getting pretty close to high tide during a king tide period. Nothing to write home about. Natural variation, you get bigger king tides at times than others. King tide happens twice a year when the sun and moon align and create extra large tidal forces. In the fall, in October, November, and in the spring, in April and May, June, about 6 weeks. There's about 4 periods in each king tide season. Tides have a natural cycle of about 14 days. Let's see, got a little bit more on that in a minute. Just some more cool drone shots, eroding beaches. Beaches don't normally erode during sunny days. They erode during hurricanes. but not normally. This is a little record I put together at the Brazos de Santiago Pass. The orange here, the yellow orange, is when the tide was at about this level and battering the base of the dunes and causing erosion. 53 times in 2018 to 2019 in a 12-month period. Some of them, you can see there's some periods here that weren't during king tides. These two periods here in the spring and in the fall are the king tides. So it's happening not just during king tides. We're getting this, and it's happening more recently, and not just king tides anymore. It's just a good example of waves lapping at the base of the dunes. Again, not an exceptional one. This was a pretty exceptional year. Quite the fun driving through this. Driving through the surf is not a big deal. The surf packs the sand, but driving on the edge of the dunes is really soft and can be quite dangerous. And you don't really want to drive through the surf. Your mechanics love you. You will hate yourself and your pocketbook. This is Black Sand Beach. Texas has had no black sand beaches in my history. I've been a beach bum for 40 years, 50 years. And what happens is the rising seas are pulling the normal silica sand out into deeper water. Black sand is magnetite. It's iron. It's heavier than silica sand. It gets left on the beach. And we are developing black sand beaches now. This is probably a tidal record strata, just in an erosion spot that shows each individual tide, maybe each individual wave. Just another picture on South Padre Island. The weather rapidly erodes the vertical faces of these dunes that have been cut by the king tides. Literally in days, the wind will blow the sand out. You can see this is an eroded face here. You can see how smooth it looks. It's all windblown sand. Texas is one of the windiest places in the world, the Texas coast. Austin is certainly not. And this is what you have to do to drive down the beach during high tide, during a king tide period, because there is no beach. An excellent example. This is back when we were still having sargassum on the Texas coast. We lost the sargassum a year or two after this and haven't had it since. We had it as bad as anybody that you hear about the last year or two for almost 20 years, but it disappeared nearly a decade ago and haven't seen hardly any of it since. Again, the sargassum, this is a big old cut. This tide that caused this cut, it was only just a few inches above, where this dune hits the beach, but constant wave action is not good for a beach, for dunes. This is, I got a series of tide gauges here showing a recent acceleration in sea level rise. These are all in South or Central Texas. They all look the same, sort of, but they're just a bunch of tide data showing a recent significant increase in rate. This is the tourist beach at South Padre Island. This is a middle tide, maybe even low tide. People drive their little cars through this stuff, and it's a lot worse on little cars than it is on big Suburbans. And when the tide is up, I didn't catch the tide all the way up here, but you can see the wet sand extends all the way underneath these people's camps. Corpus Christi Causeway. This is the Snoopy's restaurant. You're ever in Corpus Christi, go to Snoopy's. Right on the Intercoastal Canal, Corpus Christi Bay. This is their overflow parking lot during King Tide Pulse in 2017. The Devil's Elbow. This is the big bend of the coast of Texas. Birds in Texas are incredible. I've not caught, this is a fall migration. I've not caught the migration this good since 2012, but boy, have I tried. It's just phenomenal to see tens of thousands of birds like this. The the entire beach was covered up. You can see way in the background here, about every quarter of a mile, there was a pod of several thousand birds for 75, 100 miles on Padre Island. Um, this is shifting over to Padre Island National Seashore north in Corpus Christi. This is just King Tide Pulse. When is this one? Oh, I didn't put the date on this one. It's fairly early. This is like 2015, probably. You can see a little bit of erosion right here. The four dunes aren't impacted yet, but no beach. North Padre Island National Seashore again. Just a little quote from NOAA. The flooding frequencies typical in 2000. The increase in 2019 was extraordinary. There was, it's just, you guys know, and here are the impacts. Here's another big cut. This is, mile 50? This is a 60-mile long four-wheel drive beach on Padre Island National Seashore. This is what it looks like back in the past. Look back here. Look, see how big the beach was. I grew up on the beach. I grew up south of Houston. I'm 89. I'm 29 years old here. This is what the beach looked like until the late 2000s. It was literally, so hot down here, a death march from the water to the dunes to go do your business. The sand is so hot. It's my lovely wife. Look how big the beach is. The old 71, you'll notice that we're at 7 miles beyond the four-wheel drive only sign. You can drive down on the packed sand below the high tide mark. You pull right in up above the high tide mark that I'm standing on. And if you get stuck, you don't have far to dig out. This is relatively, this is a super low tide. This is actually during the king tide period. When the sun and moon aligns, they not only produce some of the largest tides of the year, but some of the lowest tides of the year too. I've never seen this many little clam volcanoes before. We also had, this is in the fall, we also had a big cold front blow through. Literally, it blows the water off the beach out into the Gulf of Mexico. In combination with an extra low tide with king tides, you get seafloor exposed that hasn't been exposed a long time. Here's this day was a mess. This was the first time, the day after the first time that Padre Island National Seashore was closed to visitors because of non-storm high water in 2013. And when I started realizing, hey, sea level rise, climate change, better start filming. This is the Devil's Elbow, seen from the Big Dune. The Big Dune is quite a place on Padre Island National Seashore for those that like to camp or fish. There it is, the Big Dune. It sticks up twice as high as any dune within miles. I have no idea why it's there. Chance, who knows? But it's a landmark. Here's a series of pictures taken from the top of the Big Dune that shows the progression, not only of the beach, but of my vehicles. There's the old Suburban. 2009, Les Beach. There's a big party in 2013. That's not my party, by the way, but I did talk with him for a while, and I think I had a beer. 2014, 2017. This is a low tide. This was a pretty high king tide pulse. Big wind. The wind helps king tides. Texas, big winds from the south or southeast push water up on the coast instead of like that big norther that created that huge low tide, blew all the water out into the Gulf of Mexico. 1984. I just gotten out of college. We used to go down there and spend a week at a time at mile 7 beyond the four-wheel drive sign, because you get farther than that in two-wheel drive, doesn't come back. Big Beach, 1989. This is just a wonderful shot. This is the trip that me and the wife made. Big Beach, 1989 again in the old 71. There's a 1990 Suburban at mile 35. 60-mile long four-wheel drive beach is incredible. It is true wilderness, even though it's not a designated wilderness. Another big beach, you can see a whole bunch of sargassum here. And remember, the sargassum marks extents of high tide. Look at all this beach. This is all storm beach. This only gets covered up during storms in our old climate. 2005, big beach. That must be the 1990 Suburban. This is back South Padre again, a king tide pulse during low tide. I don't know why I got South Padre in there. North Padre, just more erosion. This is low tide during a king tide pulse. This is 1978 at Surfside Beach, which is just south of Galveston. That's me with hair and frisbee and lots of friends. This is the year I graduated from high school. Look at the beach. Look how big. These cars here line the edge of the water. There are a couple of cars deep. This is the most populous place at Surfside Beach, which was where all the cool kids went. We didn't go to Galveston. And of course, the obligatory babe picture. That was fun. This is same beach. This beach, by the way, oil and water extraction and sea level rise. This beach is gone. There's still a beach there. It's tiny, and the first row of beach houses are gone. And so the Army Corps came in. It's called Fallout Island, Surfside Beach. Army Corps came in with a dune restoration project. Don't try it the way the Corps did, at least. They came in with clay. They totally wiped out the ecosystem. This clay is now embedded in the beach, and it didn't work. This is the year after they tried. So you can see the fledgling Spartina grass here. They tried to do this restoration. Haven't been down there since, but in only a year we had this kind of erosion. I'm sure it's basically gone now. This is Hurricane Ike, 2014. Ike hit Galveston, just north of Galveston. It's 200 miles from this point. This is actually at the Big Dune on Padre Island National Seashore. This is all the stuff on West Beach, Galveston, West Galveston. It was an offshore wind because the storm hit up the coast north and northeast of Galveston. So offshore wind, 90 miles an hour, all houses on stilts, bottoms enclosed on most of them. They had all sorts of storage, living quarters up above, blew out everybody's storage on West Beach, and it ended up on Padre Island National Seashore. Took them 4 months. I don't know how many thousands of tons of debris. Surf riders, a lot of great folks pitched in to help clean the beach up. While we're at the beach still, Elon used to be a good guy. I'll not talk about him anymore, but this is at Boca Chica. Boca Chica is hardly any beach there anymore. I don't have any pictures of it, but neat pictures. What Elon's doing is neat. He's just not playing fair. And again, I'll stop talking about Elon. This is the winter storm Uri in Austin in 2021. By winter storm standards, not a very big deal. But 11 days before it was 85 degrees. 11 days after it was 86 degrees. It got down to 2 at my house. It stayed below freezing for 7 days. 20 million people without power for an average of 42 hours, according to the University of Houston. 978 people were killed in an excess deaths analysis in just the 7 days of the event. Doesn't include afterwards. My family was particularly hard hit. My wife had sepsis, a UTI, urinary tract infection, routine. She was treating with cranberry juice and rest. And then the storm hit. We don't go anywhere when it snows an inch in Austin. So she was just toughing it out, and it went septic on her. Battery on my Suburban was dead. the hood came down on the back of my head, loaded with snow, and smashed my face into the fender. The Our neighbor, fortunately, has a construction guy, has got a big 4-wheel drive. He took us to the emergency room. The wife spent 36 hours in a temporary critical care bed with her lowest blood pressure was 52/44. She spent 9 days in the hospital. She's just about recovered. She had long sepsis. Everybody knows what long something is because of long COVID. Um, it was insane. This is my lone cherry tomato. See it right there? This is my vegetable garden in the backyard with more snow than I've ever seen in my 65 years in Texas. This is what many of the 20 million people without power for an average of 42 hours. This is what the inside of their houses look like. This is a view from inside our kitchen looking out. We were fortunate. We had heat. We turned it down to about 60 and kept the fireplace roaring. But the wife and I was back and forth to the hospital. I don't have a whole lot of pictures of this event. Afterwards, the 80-degree temperature plunge burn all the leaves off of everything. Incredible, incredible, incredible. This is a cold frontal passage up in the hill country. This is a live oak. Live oaks normally lose their leaves in March and April. This is, a week after Valentine's Day. What an event. All right, again, Austin, February this year, we had Winter Storm Mara, an inch of ice. Didn't freeze on the roads. It was just below freezing. The roads were wet, weren't frozen. But the trees, oh my gosh, this is my backyard. There's the chimney. See my chimney? That's the one I'm rebuilding. This is what remained of our biggest red oak tree. You can see back here, there's a little roof. That's a little playhouse I built for my daughter 25 years ago. And well, it was a mess. This was a rare tree, a Blanco crabapple. It's coming back. This is a neighbor's house. This is the remains. I worked for 6 weeks, a couple hours a day. And then for 3 weeks at my mom's house in Georgetown. This is firewood that I got at my house. You can see this is old firewood. This is new here, and all this is new. And it's a lot of firewood. All came off my yard, 1/3 of an acre. This is my mom's house, about a half an acre, but she had already spent $5,000 with a tree guy. We just came in, me and my brothers just came in and cleaned up after the tree guys. Got probably another cord of wood. Austin again, 2013 Halloween. We've had 2 big Halloween floods, 2013 and 2015. This one was a record on Onion Creek. The other one was, is it about tied a record? Big floods, big damage. There's, Austin's hilly. It's not like the flooding from that big hurricane in Houston. Damn it. Excuse my language. Because we're not so flat. And so, but we do still have some areas in the floodplain. We had 700 homes, I think, flooded. I was flooded in 79 in a flood in Houston. So this is all too familiar. It just gets everything, including your walls. Here's a house with the walls torn out. And seeing all this furniture go into that crusher in the back of the trash truck is just incredible stuff. You can save some things. Hopefully these folks were able to save some stuff. In Austin, again, this is back to the 2011 to 2013 new drought of record. The Highland Lakes, Lake Buchanan, kind of says it all. There's not much water. Where there's normally water, there is now consternation. She filled back up, but now she is, the lakes, there's 5 of them. 2 of them are flood control or variable level. They are now real close. They're about 6 feet, I believe, of the low level that was set in 21. in 2011 to 20, it was set in 2013 at the end of the big drought. This is just an aerial of the upper end of Buchanan showing where the lake used to be. Funny thing, bluebonnets in Texas, you've all probably heard of them. The bluebonnet seeds are so tenacious. You can see here, these seeds are below the normal water level. They can live for decades underneath the lake. This is all below lake level, these bluebonnets. Incredible. If you guys have never been in a massive field of bluebonnets like this, the smell will knock your socks off. Lake Travis, just lots of low water. Lake Travis again. This is the Lakeway City Park, or at least the edge of it. This is the swim area protection by buoys. And it was so hot and dry in 2011, killed a bunch of trees like this year. These are cedars, which are not quite as sturdy as most people believe. Oaks and underbrush, everything is brown. This is my neighborhood, just right around the corner. And as you would expect, the fire risk was very high. It's a great Texas picture. This was the fire in my neighborhood. 11 homes burned. The Pinnacle Fire. This is my board member's home back here that's on fire. That's it. You know, that picture of me on my roof made it to the front page of the Houston Chronicle. This is just when we had some thick smoke. I can't even tell where this was pointed. You could just about reach out and touch this guy. Coincidentally, we had the water tankers at a layover at Austin Bergstrom at our airport, and they loaded up, man, or maybe they stay loaded and came and dumped. I mean, just the fire missed my house by about 200 feet, so the dye missed my house by about 200 feet. That's just, there was so many fire trucks. This is just right up the street. That's a canoe. Those are where fallen logs burned. That's my board member's house. I convinced Chief Buck, Austin Fire Chief, not to tear the house down. For just, they were going to tear it down. This is where the garage was. It was still smoking. I asked him to put some more water on it, stir it up with their equipment, but don't tear it down. You see this rosewood furniture? We saved that stuff. We saved this furniture. They cleaned it. Very little else was saved. This is the big fire, 1,700 homes, Memorial Day. This fire was in April. 1,700 homes. I didn't get a whole lot of pictures of this one. I did run up and check it out. Big Bend, desert mortality. A lot of people believe the desert can handle drought. Not so. If it rains less than the evolutionary boundaries of an ecosystem, it doesn't matter if it's a desert or a rainforest, there's going to be stress. The stress manifests. These are Ocotillo. They in the cactus family, or actually they're scratch that. I'm not sure if they got big thorns on them. Bark borers, just like bark, or not, they're similar to flathead borer. It's a much larger insect than the bark beetles that attack conifers across the West. That's Santa Elena Canyon, Mexico on the left, U.S. on the right, Rio Grande right down the middle. See these little bushes here? What you can't see out here is you can see very right here. There's 15 of them. These are creosote bush. It's a pioneer species in the desert. When the cows come in and eat off the grass, a few things come back. Creosote bush is one. This is creosote bush mortality from drought. This is an Ocotillo, by the way. They have these wonderful red flowers at the top. They only put leaves on their stalks after a rain. They come on like 1 or 2 days, and then after 2 weeks, dries up and they fall off. And they look like this again, except this one is sleeping, muerto. This one has been attacked by the flathead borer that eats the cambium layer out from around the heartwood and girdles the plant and creates mortality. This is from a polar vortex excursion. This is freeze kill. This is a plant called lechuguilla, very widespread across the Chihuahuan Desert. And when you have warmer than usual temperatures for a year, for many years or decades, species acclimatize to that. And then when you get a polar vortex excursion and you have colder than recent temperatures, stuff that normally doesn't freeze will freeze to death because plants produce antifreeze, but they only produce it on demand. If it gets too cold too quick, too cold too early, or just too cold than it's been for the last years or decades, you're going to create mortality. This is candelilla. It's a common ingredient in lots of things like lip balm because it's a very waxy plant. They refine wax from it. Very common plant in the Chihuahuan. This is just a prickly pear species killed by a polar vortex. This is interesting. The ocotillo die standing up like any tree, and a big wind comes along, brittle roots, and it blows them all down. See them all? They're all blown down in the same direction. It's just another ocotillo. This is a healthy one. The one with all the goofy looking limbs is one that has been killed by the ocotillo borer. You can't tell which one's alive or dead because they don't have any leaves on them, 95% of the time. Big Bend's a wonderful place. Really interesting slide here. I've been going to this place for a long time. In 1986, before we had many more coal and bunker fuel fired coal plants in Mexico, close to the Texas border, because that's where a lot of population in Mexico is. The air was so clear it hurt your eyes. In 2016, I was able to go to the same spot that I shot in 86. And this is a bad day, bad air quality day in Big Bend. Not exceptional. An exceptional or an extremely bad day, you can't see. These mountains are 100 miles away. They're this is the Carmens. I can't remember those. Anyway, interesting. It's the air. Where you go? The air pollution is climate pollution. I mean, a lot of other things, but this is a great way to visualize. This is what we've done to our planet with climate pollution in whatever 30 years, 31 years. Just a beauty shot. Big Bend and Ocotillo. Saguaro. Saguaros were nuked by probably the same polar vortex that killed a lot of stuff in Big Bend. Healthy saguaros in Saguaro National Park east. There's 2 saguaro national parks in Tucson, east and west. Amazing life forms. This is south of Phoenix at West Pinal County Park. And these guys have been damaged by frostbite from polar vortex excursion 2013. They're vascular, so they're not like trees with cambium and the xylem and phloem. You can kill large parts of the plant with frostbite, and it will live because there's still fluids that flow up and down in the rest of the vascules. The frostbite usually isn't mortal, but it can foster bacterial infection. These were taken in 2018, 5 years after the frostbit sections, I think we're fairly rapidly the next year. The uh, Unless they get bacterial infection, they the wound dries out and the saguaro goes on. It's amazing stuff. So some are unimpacted, others just knock their socks off. This one, I believe, was probably had a bacterial infection because the literature I've read on it is they such a hardy life form. Ocotillo, and this is in the Sonoran Desert now. Chihuahuan Desert is on the east side of the Rockies. Sonoran's on the west in the Great Basin. Ocotillo boar, and the Ocotillo boar. A lot of this mortality in the desert is also caused by water stress. Um, Plants need water within their evolutionary boundaries. When you change those boundaries, you stress the plants. They are more susceptible to frostbite, to insect attack, and that's what we've got going on with the beetle kill in the Rockies. This was some of my earliest work. You can see all these trees. They're killed by the pine bark beetle, Dendroctronus ponderosae, and I have been following this sequence. This is the next year. The first year, the trees die and they turn red. If you've ever left a Christmas tree out in your backyard and forgot to drop it off at the curb, you notice that it turns red after several months. Well, that's what happens the first year after mortality with bark beetle kill. The second year, you can see some of these they were red the first year. This is the second year, or the third year actually, and they've started losing or lost many of their needles, but the attack continues. This is '09. This is the third or the fourth year after the attack. Pretty bleak, and the afternoon shower didn't help with the photography much or the bleakness. In 2015, you can see there's some regrowth starting, but you can also see a lot of the skeletons that remain. And then last year, fire ran through the area and nuked my repeat photography shot. So that's one of the challenges with climate change impacts is cascading impacts. Get all them dead trees laying around, fire waiting to happen. This year, this is Lake San Cristobal on the Alpine Loop, a series of old mining trails 4x4 at the top of the world in Southwest Colorado. The gray and brown, and you see some red in through here. This is the red and brown, a recent spruce beetle kill. It's been going on for about 5 or 6 years. This is one area that I frequent a lot, that I frequented with my family since I was 10. Just 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago now. This place was as green as all this down here. And the golden and yellow is aspen, and this is a ground cover up near tree line. This is let's see, where were we? This is just over a couple of mountains near Durango, a campground. These peaks up here above tree line, so that's probably about 13,000 feet. You see some gray up here, green down here. The bark beetle attacks the trees that are the most stressed. The higher altitudes you get, the more stress you get because of sooner snow melt and later snow up. So more warming with a longer warm season beyond the evolutionary boundaries of these ecologies creates stress. The beetles love stress. The beetles, their arch enemy is sap. Without sap, in drought conditions and warmer than evolutionary conditions, trees don't produce as much sap. That's the main reason the beetles have had such success. This is Wolf Creek Pass. Did I put elevation. Yeah, we're about 11.4 up here as an overlook way up above it. See the little road that goes up to it. This is all spruce beetle kill up here. In the background, there's some stuff that's not killed. Back over here, just on the other side of this range, it's Chama, New Mexico. I didn't put any pictures in. Lots of spruce beetle kill. Actually, I think I've got one in here. This is Ouray, Colorado. These are fir trees. This is fir beetle kill. Ouray is a cool, cool town. They call themselves the Switzerland of Colorado. They have one of the finest ice climbing canyons in the world. This is southern Colorado, again, near a family campground that I could tell you guys where it was, but then I'd have to kill y'all. This is beetle kill. These are there's a ponderosa and a fir, two different kinds of bark beetle. That there's used to be there was one bark beetle, the Ponderosa dendroctonus, which is the mountain pine beetles, the most aggressive of the pine beetles. From about the turn of the century, Super El Nino in '98 created big drought or a drought pulse that set the beetles off. 100 million acres were killed or mostly killed by the mid-teens. That beetle, because it killed most of its large expanses of lodgepole and ponderosa pine, that attack is waning. It's literally 20% of the forest have been killed or heavily damaged. Now we've got spruce beetle and fir beetles that are coming in, different varieties of spruce and fir, and different varieties of beetle, and they're picking up. We're not quite back to the aggressive kill 9 or 10 million acres per year that the mountain pine beetle is creating, but we're at 7 to 9. It's getting bad again. This is that family campground I told you about, and over here is spruce beetle kill. This is spruce beetle kill up on the way to Wolf Creek Pass. It's dotted with beautiful golden aspen. Just a telephoto. This is from Groundhog Park. This is it's 2 hours dirt high clearance road from Cathedral Campground. It's a high mountain park, 11,000 feet, that was just wiped out. 100,000 acres gone in 2 to 3 years, about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. This is on the border of New Mexico, I was talking about a minute ago. It's very, very widespread, and I've got a bunch more pictures from across North America, not just Colorado. This is a pheromone trap. This pheromone in there so that they synthesize it attracts beetles. Beetles have two pheromones: one that attracts beetles so that they can mass on a single tree so that they can kill the tree. Two, when the beetles sense that they've got enough beetles in the tree, they emit a different pheromone that says go away. You can use those pheromones. That's what a lot of folks are doing to protect their valuable trees in beetle country, is they're using these pheromones in different application methods. Anyway, liquid here, and you can see those are mostly beetle, not beetle, but mostly, and these are presence absence traps too. This is not trying to control the beetle. You just can't do that unless you spray every tree or apply pheromones to every tree in the forest. Every year, and it has to be applied when the beetles fly, which almost always is when the snow's still on the ground. Very difficult to make hand applications. Teton National Park, not exempt. There's gray up here. This is a very slow kill. The spruce kill is a much slower kill than the aggressive pine bark beetle, mountain pine beetle. This is Mirror Lake in the Uintas in in Utah, east of Salt Lake City. Very high altitude. This is almost 12,000 feet. This area was hit after a lot of the pine bark beetle, a lot of spruce here, and spruce bark beetle is very extensive. Jasper National Park. This is just a really pretty picture. It's not really extensive attack, but you can see the red is all beetle mortality. These are, I believe, mostly lodgepole. This is the Athabasca River in Jasper, and you can see all the beetle kill over here on this mountain. Denali, this is south of Denali, about 75 miles. That's a big thing. You can see back in through here, beetle kill. There's another one. Denali is up here somewhere. This is Denali State Park. Beetle kill. Big Bend, beetle kill. These are pinyon trees that were killed coincident with the polar vortex attack and 2011 to 2013 drought. So really stressful years. Pinyon beetle that has run amok in the Four Corners area. Wherever there's pinyon beetles. This is Casa Grande. This is my photography company is named after this mountain in Big Bend, and a beetle killed pinyon. Mesa Verde, you can see these are pinyon up here that have been attacked by pinyon beetle. This is Cliff Palace. That's a neat place y'all have never been. This is Calaveras Big Trees. There's one, this is a state park, Redwood State, Sequoia, state park with sequoias in California. There's a sugar pine here that is being attacked by some species of beetle that I don't know. Here's another sugar pine in Calaveras. Look, there's a suburban down there that my colleagues call that the ice melter. Let's see, what am I doing? 422. All right. I'm not going to get through all this, but I'll get through some of it. You guys let me know. I got 20 more minutes, I think.
Bruce, I think we'd like to provide some time for questions and some comments. So
okay.
maybe you could give us a little wrap up for a minute or so, and we'll open it up so people can get on with their days.
All
Does
right.
that work for you?
Sure.
Thank
Let me wrap up by zipping through Yosemite and all the beetle attack. This is cool. Those are climbers. Half Dome. Incredible place. The fires in Santa Rosa, the Tubbs Fire, 5,000 homes. Jasper National Park beetle kill. Beetle kill in the Brooks Range. Budworm doesn't kill the trees, but it sure makes them want to wish they were dead. These are budworm moths. This is sudden aspen decline. This is aspen leaf miner. Very, very extensive across the Great North. Eats all of the chlorophyll out of the leaves. These should be bright green, or all their chlorophyll is gone. Kills them after a number of years of defoliation. It's a pandemic in willows. This is fires at Mesa Verde. The forest is not coming back 20 years later. It's just lack of regeneration caused by dryness. Sequoias, some that made it, some that didn't. Big fires. Big things. All right. It's amazing how fire can kill something that's thousands of years old that has evolved to resist fire. This is oaks in California killed by drought. Glacier Retreat, British Columbia. A dirt glacier, Wrangell St. Elias. There's a glacier under there. This is a rainbow glacier in Wrangell St. Elias, another dirt glacier. Dirt glaciers form when they're dying. This is a glacier right outside of Fairbanks. So it was 10 years ago. That's the way it is today. Pyrocumulonimbus, debris flow after the Thompson fire in California. Paradise, 14,000 homes in 6 hours. '07, permafrost. We had to go to the University of Fairbanks. Some of you may know Katie Walter Anthony. Couldn't find it. It was there. I mean, we could find some things that looked like permafrost melt, but she pointed us to some stuff inside the city limits. And we eventually found a couple other places at Thermal Karst Pond. Some drunken telephone poles. This is 2007. This is 2018. It's not everywhere, but it's widespread. The Hall Road. Oh, that's a murderous road. Broke the frame on the truck. This is permafrost thaw. Those trees don't normally die like that. The Brooks Range. Murderous road. 240 miles to the next gas. That's a debris flow, melting permafrost. Adigan Pass, Brooks Range. There's the pipeline. Murderous road. Mosquitoes. Permafrost thaw. See all the drunken trees, permafrost thaw, and beetle kill. Murderous road. Murderous road. Permafrost thaw. This is in Canada. Big guy. Okay. Questions?
Thank you so much. That was a pictorial documentation of the worst. And we know that there's more serious impacts that we can only imagine or that have been experienced throughout the world. Robert, you have a question or comment about this work?
Thanks so much, Bruce. Look, it really helps to humanize the whole story of climate change. And the concern that it raises for me is that you get people saying that we can store carbon in trees, and yet the problem is that fire and drought are just making that unfeasible. So I think you've given us a really good illustration of essentially the need for a more holistic technological approach to planetary cooling. That is, that the idea of simplistic responses like planting trees that are not going to mature is something that's really difficult. And so we've had the similar fire and flood problems in Australia, and I think that your shots of the ice and snow so far south of where they normally come is pretty shocking, and just shows how the jet stream is just wandering around and just creating haywire weather. So if you have any comment on those things.
Well, first, the fires, the Black Summer, is it 21 in Australia?
2019, 20.
2019. One of the most fascinating things that I've discovered about those fires, several of the big fires coalesced and created a smoke chimney that rose to about 15,000 feet higher than the tropopause, which is about 15,000 feet higher than the highest thunderstorms ever recorded. it created a vortex 700 miles across, an ozone hole vortex 700 miles across that persisted for 7 weeks. Just an astonishing event that literally poked a hole in the stratosphere. The forest not sequestering. A really good way to understand this is publications on forest mortality. Forget who it is now. McDowell. McDowell 2019, 2020. On average, across the globe, forest mortality has now doubled. When you double forest mortality, you have carbon storage because forests are such modest sequestrers. The reason they sequester so much is because there's so many of them, but they only have a modest capacity per unit. A little bit of degradation, having their life, having the age, when you double mortality, you have the age, you have the carbon storage because you have the life of the forest. Our forests are now, on average, emitting, not sequestering. Canadian forest, the Amazon, and permafrost lands, which include drowned forests, are now emitting probably more than 7 gigatons CO2 EQ annually. And their collapses have just begun. And these are just those three. Permafrost is pretty big, but Canadian forests aren't that big. Amazon is even smaller. Those are just the studied and published upon findings. Similar ecologies globally are likely behaving similarly, meaning that 7 gigatons is probably an understatement. So absolutely, our forest, we can conserve what we've got, but we've got to restore our climate first. It's going to, even if we were to halt all warming, the degradation would continue because we've only seen the extremes, the most frequent extremes in our new climate if we halted all warming. As time progresses, we would see more extreme events. We've only seen the 2-year or the 5-year drought, for example. As time progresses, we're going to see more 5-year droughts and 10-year droughts, which are much more extreme, 25-year, et cetera. So even if we halted all warming, extremes become more extreme and ecologies don't restore themselves. Once they started collapse, system science, once a collapse began, the collapse does not self-stabilize, almost always, unless the thing that caused the collapse to begin is removed. So absolutely, forest, we can do the best we can, but the best we can, they're still going to emit more, and their sequestration is going to continue to fail.
Bruce, we have a couple of follow-up questions on that topic. Before I turn to Gregory Slater, who also has a question concerning what the effects of these wildfires and the forest die-off is with respect to the potential for soil storage in the forest and sequestration in the soil, and then the potential for biochar, either created by the forest fires or amplified by addition. What would your comment be on that relative to what we're experiencing with loss of forest?
Biochar is a neat thing in nature. Forest net carbon flux includes biochar. So biochar is a neat thing. I worked on an algae biochar project for the X Prize here several years ago. It's a neat thing. You get lots of energy from biochar gases, plus you get all the benefits of the biochar in the process. And you from recycling the energy and from the biochar itself, you get or you can create negative carbon biochar. As far as forests go, well, maybe I'm not answering your question. What's
I'm just referring, you can look in the chat too. You'll see some of it and you may want to consider those as well. But we're at an hour now. So let's see if we can get as many questions and comments as possible in. Gregory, you have a question or a comment?
Questions. Thank you. A very interesting presentation, depressing, unfortunately, but you used the term, one thing, I had a couple things, but I can take either or none, but you mentioned this term climate pollution. Could you define that more precisely? And then the second thing is, there's a huge amount of destruction you covered with this, and I have absolutely no doubt that lots of it is due to ongoing global warming and all the knock-on effects, but you have to somehow disentangle with from all the other from the historically always present level of these kind of things, infestations, etc. So, I mean, how do you go about doing that? Finding the attribution to global warming and climate change, and separating it from much longer term than the Anthropocene or something.
I've got some good examples. I've got some good examples for you. Three things. First, sad. Can you imagine my mental state if I understood this all to be sad? The way I get around that is that these things are natural. We cause them, but they also happen exactly the same when our climate changes abruptly, naturally, without humans involved. Therefore, because our climate changes abruptly and kills off all its ecosystems only every 10,000 years or so, these are the most rare things our civilization has ever encountered. To me, that is extraordinary beauty there in that rareness. There is extraordinary beauty in the natural systems cycling through themselves. Yeah, it means we're probably all going to die, but in the meantime, it's the natural beauty, the natural science that keeps me from throwing myself out the window of a tall building. And I encourage everyone, I try to do this in almost everything I do. I just had so many pictures to get through this time. I try to encourage everybody to look at it in this way. Yeah, it's sad. The built environment destruction is one that I really don't have an answer for yet. That is just sad. That hurts a lot. But if there's no built environment involved, this is what I'm talking about. The rarest, most beautiful things, because it's natural, because it's in nature, it's beautiful by definition. So I try to encourage people to look at things in this way, because sadness, our emotions get in the way of deeper thinking. And if we can disentangle, like next question, emotions from thought, then we can create better thoughts and we can understand how to deal with this better. Climate pollution, greenhouse gases, black carbon, nitrous oxide, albedo. Mostly I refer to greenhouse gases when I talk about climate pollution. The reason I do that is because all this stuff about global warming and climate change, our culture has never experienced that. We literally do not know how to behave. We have no history from which to draw. It is pollution. The atmospheric removal processes that we're going to use to restore our climate, once hopefully we get it under control with some kind of geoengineering strategy, they are pollution treatment strategies. They literally remove pollution from our environment, just like any other kind of emitted pollution. That's why I call it climate pollution, is that global warming and climate change are relatively unknown in our history. We literally do not know how to behave. This has never happened to us before. Natural impacts, disentangling from climate change impacts. Example, the largest beetle attacks ever recorded or ever known from evidence, prehistoric evidence from tree rings, is about 4 million acres. In 2017, the beetle attack still ongoing was at 100 million acres. 4 million acres across North America, 100 million acres across North America. There are scales that we can use, examples to logically deduce that, well, if this is natural, then it really, 100 million acres versus 4 million acres. Other scales, other things of scale.
I guess, yeah, thank you. I guess what would be nice is for compelling is basically time series of such events, so you can see the outliers as you just described, one that was many order, huge. And so if you could present those, that kind of thing along with the slides and show, like the beetles, there have always been beetle attacks, but here's the distribution over time. And that brings it home to anybody that, yeah, okay, I get it. And then similarly with other disastrous events.
We've got, because these extremes have just started in the last decade-ish, we don't have the luxury of having this kind of evidence generally. The acreage of pine beetle kill is kind of an exception. Fire extremeness is another area where we can look to history and understand that 15 to 20% max of fires over all of our evidential records that go back, before European times from tree rings, were extreme fires. Now, 95% of the area burned in wildfires in the American West is extreme fire. We've got to use inferences because in a lot of situations, we just don't have the time series. We don't have the data. This stuff has just begun. This is one of the problems with flooding. It's a time series problem throughout data collection, non-stationarity of data. NOAA just completed their update of their rainfall intensity and frequency evaluation for Texas. They were completed in 2018. Last time they did it was in 1970. The 100-year storm in a large swath of coastal Texas, 200 miles inland, is now the 50-year storm. But NOAA assumed the data were stationary. And you guys all know that climate change data is not stationary. They made an assumption because without high-powered statistics, that's the only way they could do it. This is the way they've always done it. And even high-powered statistics still just do a better approximation than frequent statistics do. So non-stationarity of data with rainfall intensity and frequency evaluations creates a 60% underestimation of the actual intensity and frequency of those storms. We've got to use different pieces of science to show where we have a lack of time series that can tell us, these rare events,
Just
let me jump in here for a second. We're at 2:45. No problem, Gregory. We have two raised hands, and I'd like to get to them. Bruce, if you can stick with us until 3 o'clock.
Oh yes, thank you. Thank you all
for 15 more minutes. 15 more minutes. I'm going to sneak in here with a question that's really a follow-up to Greg's, and that's you've been showing a lot of alarming pictures of things that happened in Texas, and I'm in California. We are politically very different. And It makes me wonder, not so much about Austin, which is surrounded by Texas, but is more aligned with California. Mm-hmm. But people that visit Padre Island have second homes and probably come from wide ranging throughout Texas. What is the communication value of the kinds of pictures that you show in terms of raising alarm or some sense of need for action regarding climate change, of the kind of communication that you've been doing with your photography and your film documentaries? And I guess my other question would be, why isn't it working in Texas?
The value of photos and why it's not working. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. The global warming psychology says seeing is believing. It says that traditional analytical learning, like we've always done with science, works great for science people, but how many people are science people? Everybody else puts them to sleep. They turn the channel, they click away. So the way that we overcome this or reduce the clicking away is through images and using color. Even color in graphics is an excellent way to keep somebody's attention. Whereas if you just got a bunch of paragraphs of black and white print and black and white graphics, a little bit of color in a graphic is going to touch on something in your brain that creates a little bit more motivation to stay with the program. Pictures are even better. Moving pictures are even better. Music is even better than that. That's why we incorporate the videos and the Ken Burns stills with all of our Austin music. Blues is a prime example of music. The blues are about things, bad things that some of us have had happen to them, but other things that we can relate to. So we like the blues. Part of it is because we can relate to the story. It works great with climate change. The blues, we do a lot of blues with the band. It just works with climate change, and it helps. So why is it not working? Well, because not enough people are using images. In Texas, why doesn't it work? Well, people don't pay attention. Beach erosion is a good example. One, they don't pay attention. Two, high tides. Well, the erosion, the dune erosion erases itself from the wind in just days. So it's really hard to see. But the big thing is that it's only high tide, 53 times a year in 2019. But it's only high tide for 2 or 3 hours each of those 53 times. Half the time it's dark. 5/7 of the time it's the weekend. 6/12 of the time in Texas, it's winter and you're not at the beach. So very, very few people see this stuff at the beach, the erosion, the high tides, the water up into the dunes. I keep an eye on the tide charts. I go down there specifically during the peak of the king tide so that I can get the epic pictures. I have locals who have been on and lived in South Padre and Corpus their entire lives, just occasionally go to the beach, coincidentally come at a king tide pulse. I'm out there with my camera shooting around, talking to people. They have no idea what's going on. They have never, ever seen this before. The media doesn't cover this kind of thing, probably for the same reason. 2013 was the first time that Padre Island National Seashore was ever closed due to high water during non-storm periods. So it's only been going on for 11 years, which is not a really long time when something is so nebulous and so hard to see. I did a calculation one time. It's only about 7% of the time that the water is up into the dunes. that, people are available to see it. So there's many, many other reasons why it's not working. But one of the reasons is because, well, the beetle kill, it's mostly above 9 or 10,000 feet in the west. You get down below that, we got some trouble in the Pinyon in the Four Corners area on the edges of the desert, in the desert mortality species. But, all the death in the desert, everything looks dead in the desert anyway. These things are really hard to see. Once you can see them, and then you start appreciating for what they are, and don't get sad about it. So it's communicating these things. That's what global warming psychology says, is we got to show people. So that's what we're doing. We're showing people. Most folks have no idea these things are going on. The fires in California emitted enough CO2 in 2020 alone to wipe out twice all of the emissions reduction savings that California has ever created. Just the fires in 2020. These little things like that tell us how strong Mother Nature is, how strong these ecological collapses are relative to the effort that we're putting towards trying to mitigate climate pollution.
Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it to Ron and then Brian, and then we'll wrap up. But before we do, anyone who is on here who is not on our Google list but would like to be, please put your email in the chat. And Ron, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Bruce. That was a really amazing, it was just a powerful experience. Just seeing those slides, even for those of us who are pretty jaded already, and I think it does prove your point that these things have an emotional impact. It also relevant to the bunker fuel thing, but. What I wanted to ask, and trying to get us, we are an action group, and we're trying to, and as you know, you're on the steering committee. We are trying to work to improve the situation, and if possible, slow it down or reverse it. And I know that I understand that you were convinced the Sierra Club to adopt a policy of trying to bring us back down to below 1 degrees and 1 degree Celsius. And I'm just curious, I'd be really curious about, first of all, does that include a direct climate cooling? I know you've talked about this, and I don't recall the specifics of how you framed it, but are they on board with direct climate cooling, or how do they propose to actually get us below 1 degrees? Are they still thinking that we can do that with emission cuts and GHG drawdown only, or are they coming around to the idea of more of an interventionist direct climate cooling approach?
Yes, all above. Getting them to lower their warming target to less than 1C was fairly easy, which surprised me. And I'll get to the geoengineering thing in just a second, so surprises me more. Sierra Club had adopted 350 ppm CO2 when Hansen came out with a target atmospheric CO2 in 2008, or a year or two after that, when everybody else was adopting 350. Sierra Club adopted it. And then 2018-ish, everybody adopted 1.5C, and it was widely assumed that 350 and 1.5C are the same thing. It, of course, is not. But there wasn't a whole lot of science that showed this until Hansen's Young People's Burden modeled it in 17, which came out 350 is a little bit less than 1C, probably about 0.85C above 1850 to 1900. So just by communicating Hansen's latest science, I was able to suggest, and just keep it simple, let's drop it down to 1C instead of 0.85C. So they went along with that. What surprised me to death was that all of the things that Hansen said to the reasons why 350 or less than 1C, a restoration target was so important was about Earth systems collapses. Our civilization cannot function with our systems collapsing, and our systems begin to collapse as soon as we warm above the natural variation of our old climate, which is maxes out about 1C. So that jumped over to direct cooling and geoengineering real easily. One of the guys on our policy committee actually said when we introduced everybody at our first Zoom, the only reason he was here was to make sure we didn't do anything stupid about geoengineering, because the policy title was resilience, carbon dioxide removal, and geoengineering. And there was about 8 of us, I think. What we ended up doing, because of Hanson's natural systems boundaries and ecological systems collapse fundamentals with the 350 and the 1C, it was an easy jump to say, well, I'm not going to push you guys to support geoengineering, but we really have to have research on geoengineering because emergency cooling is really likely to be needed. And everybody said, okay, that's fine. Made it through all the committees and the boards. And so that's that story. The other question, no, that was both questions, wasn't it, Ron? Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, it's quite a story. Yeah. Thank you for your
top of the hour.
Yeah.
Bruce, Bruce, you've done an incredible job of articulating the challenges and losses of our natural capital on our planet over the past few decades. I'm just wondering, given all your experience, do you have any thoughts on how to better quantify natural capital as we go forward? Because if there's one thing I've learned about civilization, they can manage what they can measure. And I wonder if our measures of natural capital have really begun to address some of the gaps that you've identified in your wonderful pictorial essays.
You know, this is something, my daughter is a master's candidate in advanced math at Johns Hopkins. She's got 1 semester to go. She's been working in math for about a decade. We talk about advanced statistics all the time. I'm still learning about, I'm engineering, frequentist statistics, no problem. But when you get to Bayesian and all this other stuff, I'm still learning, and my daughter is helping me a lot. But we're still, it's too new. The data is changing. We don't know where it's going. I mean, we know it's increasing. We know it's likely increasing non-linearly, which makes it even harder for statistics. But the hardest part is that we just don't know where it's going. And we just don't have that much data collected. It hasn't been long enough. So what I'm doing with making these comparisons with other bits of science, making logical leaps, something that IPCC has been telling authors at least the last 2 assessment reports, is they've got to use more expert elicitation. They have to make logical leaps. And so I think that's where we've got to go. And you don't need images to do this, but images help.
Yeah, especially remote sensing images. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned statistics. You're reminding me of my statistical mechanics class at Princeton, and fundamentally, the measure of entropy, I believe, can provide a quantification. And I'm very interested in researching how can we use negative entropy as a tool to measure and quantify natural capital across the planet. I'd be happy to, for anyone interested, please get in touch.
That's fun. I mean, Earth's energy imbalance. It's fundamentally, though, the lack of data and the recentness.
Satellites, drones, it's a whole new world.
But there's so many different data sources that are becoming available. The science, that's one of the other reasons, besides for the natural beauty of these impacts, one of the other reasons that I've been so motivated doing this for all these years is it's just so fascinating. The way that science can work things out logically. So anyway, thank you all. It's been wonderful presenting to you. And remember, they are the rarest, some of the most beautiful things that our advanced civilization has ever occurred. We can use that beauty to help us think more clearly. Make sure you tell your friends. It's awful tough with the built environment, but everywhere else we've got natural history to rely upon to back us up. It's a beautiful world out there.
Thank you, Bruce. On behalf of all of us, we really appreciated you taking the time with us and showing us your beautiful photographs.